Welcome, everybody, to Hanging Out with Howie. I have a very cool and special guest tonight, Tony Fernandez. So he's either over here or down there. But there he is.
What's
How
up?
are
What's
you,
up?
Tony?
I'm doing fantastic, Howie. Very excited to be here. Thanks for having me, man.
I love it. Boy, you really drew a crowd tonight here. This
That's
is
awesome.
amazing. Now, the title of for this, which I guess drew a lot of people, is passive versus active sound reinforcement.
Sure.
I would like a little bit of your background first. Where did you get your start?
Me just in general, just in DJing.
Yes,
Yeah.
DJ.
Okay. Well, I'll try to not go too far back, like from the womb, and try to make it short.
Yeah.
I actually, I actually grew up. I was born and raised in New York. Lived in Manhattan and Queens for a while. So the first 15 years of my life was in New York City, and it very much. I'm very much a product of my environment when it comes to that. Back then, because I'm a little bit older than most. This is before, corporate radio, before formats, before it really was a unique time to be not only in the city, and mind you, I'm a kid, but for me, I was surrounded by so much music that it just kind of just infused itself in me. My mom listened to more like Motown Elvis stuff. So I got acclimated to that. My dad listened to what I call like American standards. So he listened to like, Andy Williams, Engelbert Humperdinck, Tony Bennett, Frank Sinatra, all that kind of stuff. And then me being a kid in New York, forget it, man. I was all over the radio. I'm actually surprised I still got 10 digits between flipping the radio stations in my dad's car when I was running around and messing around with his stereo. He actually had a really good high-end hi-fi stereo. So all that, and then just being in the city, just going from wherever to whatever, you'd hear Latin music, you hear Spanish music, you'd hear reggae, you'd hear hip hop. Back then, it was rap when it was just coming out. You hear R&B, you hear, I guess, what they consider adult contemporary now. You hear rock. I mean, it was just everywhere. It was just
Yeah,
everywhere.
that's it. Well, because I'm a city kid myself, I can identify with
Yeah,
that. So,
yeah.
so with all this different input that you had during this magical time, well, what was your first gig then that you
Well,
got
you
in
know
at
what
for
what
DJ?
what what ended up happening was at one point, because I guess my mom didn't want me to be a little punk in New York. I got sent to school in Virginia, and that's how I ended up being here in Virginia,
Ah,
staying in Virginia. So,
mm-hmm,
and back then there was like a 5 year window where I was going to school, and I would really only go home twice a year. I'd go home for Christmas break and summer break.
mm-hmm,
And again, people have to realize that music, even radio station music, was really regional.
mm-hmm.
It wasn't as streamlined and as corporate and as like, what happened, like now a record label releases a single, everybody gets it.
Mm-hmm.
The radio stations, the TV stations, whatever, streaming platforms, it goes out to 200, 300 markets. Back then, they did it in tiers. You'd have your top 20 markets, and that was where they made their real money. And then it would kind of, the music would kind of ramp down to the second tier markets and then the third tier markets. So what was happening, what I discovered really quick was when I would go home, I would load up on cassettes and load up on some singles, bring them down to Virginia. People were like, "What's this? This is awesome. I haven't heard this." And I would undoubtedly bring down music that sometimes, if they would get it, it'd be at best 6 weeks behind, and sometimes they wouldn't even get some of the stuff that I would bring down.
So
So
you were the cool kid in
I
town.
kind of was, man.
Yeah.
So I was bringing and importing all this music down, And I did hook up, I can't remember his name for the life of me, but through the first 2 years of the school that I was in, I kind of shadowed this guy, and we're kind of like on a separate campus, so there's like really nothing to do. So it wasn't like, hey kid, go and bother me. He actually put up with me. So I kind of shadowed a guy for a couple years, and I just kind of got bit by that music bug and the DJ bug. And when I was at home, I'd stay up late at night and listen to Jelly Bean Benitez and Shep Pettibone and Tony Humphries. And I picked up really quick that there would be like the regular album radio edits that were like 3.5 minutes long during the day, but then in New York they had mix shows, and then they would play these cool versions of the cool songs that were played during the day, but they play these alternate cool. I'm like, what's that? Why aren't they playing that at lunchtime? They only play this at night. What's going on? So I would find this stuff, bring it down, and like I said, I would kind of shadow a guy. And really, I kind of took a gap year when I left high school and went to college. I kind of was like, okay, that was fun. I'm done. Because the school we were at actually had gear, so it was easy. All I had to do was bring the content. They actually had gear, so it was easy. So when I became a freshman in college, freshman, no money, no gear, no nothing. I kind of took a kind of gap year. But what was funny is because I still kept up with the music, by the end of my freshman year in college, people were like, dude, we're having a party and we want you to play the music. And I'm like, well, that's great, but I got no gear. Don't worry about it. We'll bring the gear. You just show up with your tunes. And it just took off from there, man. It just really took off from there.
That's awesome.
I haven't looked back since.
Honestly. So tell me, I'm just guessing you're probably like myself. Tell me about the first system you built for yourself.
Oh my God, dude. I talk about living and learning life lessons. Again, I knew enough information to get myself in trouble. So when I decided, and it's funny you actually asked this, because I was actually thinking about this a little while ago, thinking about stuff that we talk about. So What I ended up doing was, I knew enough about amps and power, and I knew I needed something, and even down here, there really weren't a lot of shops that I could go to. I mean, there were obviously PA places. Didn't know about them then because they were more band driven. They really weren't sound reinforcement or installation driven. It was more like, if you're a band, you roll into this building and you pick up some PV shit and you're out the door. But I didn't even know about that stuff then. But I knew about amps and speakers, and I knew I wanted kind of big sound and good sound. And real quick, let me backtrack. I know one of the things that's helped me in the grand scheme of things is because I touched it. My dad had a really good hi-fi system at home, so I had the benefit of being around a good sound system. So I was spoiled, from day one. So for me, that's been one of the like entrenched things about me is anybody can get loud, but I want clarity. I want clear. I want to know that when I hear a vocal, it sounds like it's supposed to. I hear a sax line, I hear a piano line, it sounds like it's supposed to. So I was exposed. So consciously or subconsciously, I've always been drawn to hi-fi, high fidelity sound. And then somewhere along the line, the wires got crossed, because it was like, well, I can't take like a Polk Audio or a Mark Levinson system and bring it to a DJ gig, but I want that clarity, Yes. So it was like, how do I make, and then that kind of discovered commercial professional sound. And I'm like, how do I make the stuff I sounded at home really good? How do I get that sound going through these components? So my first system, going back to your question, believe it or not, I picked up a pair of Sherwin Vegas speakers, and I actually built, and they were really, I want to say they were like the 15 three-ways. So they were kind of big floor standing speakers.
Right.
I can't remember what I drove, But I was like, and my philosophy was, okay, I want to build myself this little system. So Monday through Friday, I'm going to have it in the dorm room and I can use it as my stereo. But on the weekends, I can whip it out and I'll be good to go. So what I did was, like I said, I bought some Sherwin Vega speakers and I made another cabinet for them that was more road, because of course are you familiar with where they're not around anymore? Circuit City, like the
yes,
the precursor to Best Buy. So Circuit City Corporate, ironically, was down here. So they actually got some really cool stuff that like other stores didn't get. Anyway, but yeah, I got some home Sherwin Vega speakers. I built another cabinet for them so the home cabinets wouldn't get jacked up. I just mess up these cabinets. I didn't care about those. And I remember, I think I bought a Sony receiver that had like 200 watts. And I'm like, oh, that's more than enough. I'll be fine. Yeah, I think I made it through 30%, maybe a third of my first gig. Speakers were fine, but that receiver did not like what I was doing to it at all. I found out really quick about power amps, preamps, stuff getting hot. Yeah, I found out real quick. Yeah, on paper this works, but in real world, yeah, I need to do something else. This isn't cutting it. So yeah, that was my very first sound system.
Well, back in the day, there really wasn't anything for DJs. It was, it's been said before, we would pick off the shelf items or build. I built my own speaker cabinets and, I tried home amps and had the same results you did.
Yep.
And my very first professional amplifiers were the Flame Linears.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, they're called phase linears, but they were known for catching on fire. So they got the catch name Flame Linears.
You had the old school, like 4RU silver with the big VUs.
Yes,
yeah, I know.
Yeah, I did. Yep. The reason I got them was because I saw the Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon tour, and I was lucky enough to get down and see what was what was going on at front of house and everything else and backstage. And I was like, okay, that's the stuff I want, because I was doing clubs.
Yep.
And so I built my own speakers and I got the Flame Linears. Thank God I didn't. I blew more speakers than I did amps. I didn't know what I was doing, and then I got into the rack world.
Right.
Compressors, limiters, and on and on. And this is all part of. I'm going to ask you to explain to some of our, let's say, younger viewers.
Sure.
What is the difference between a passive and an active system?
Well, simply put, and try, not because, people that know me or don't know me, and then we could be here for 3 hours tonight if we want.
Right. Well, let's keep
I'll try to keep it a little short. Yeah. So basically the difference between passive and active, and we were talking about passive. So passive is your, I guess, old school traditional setup where you have speakers that you place wherever, you run speaker wire back from them to a power amplifier. And it's usually in a rack, and that's what it is. So that's passive. Active basically takes the power amp out of the rack and slaps it in the back of the speaker. So it kind of makes it a little bit more turnkey. And you have obviously systems that go from very basic active. Like I said, it's just a power amp, where you've got some that have all kinds of DSP, digital signal processing on it, that you can do crossovers, you can do delays, you can do reverbs, EQs, blah, 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 all kinds of crazy stuff.
Right.
So, and like anything else, there's pros and cons for both. I think overall, again, to make it simple, one of the obvious pros of active is it's compact, it's turnkey, it's pretty simple. It is pretty much plug and play. You can get a couple active speakers that you drop an extension cord, a power cord, and your input signal, and boom, you're up and running. You don't have to worry about a big amp rack and so forth and so on. And personally, I know before we started this session, I barely talked about, I've actually done both. I started passive. I actually went active for a couple years. And for me, I actually after, like I said, in that 2-year tenure, toward the end of that 2 years, I actually found myself not getting the response and not getting the performance that I kind of was acclimated to. I did love the fact that I could pop up 2 tops, 2 subs in literally 15 minutes and just go, and they sounded great. I'm not knocking the company, because I'm still a huge fan of that company. The convenience factor was over the roof. I didn't have to lug around a big amp rack. I didn't have to lug around any more, processing. In my passive rig that I use now, because over time, I've built up my rig the way that I did. And again, I was very particular on how I wanted things to sound. And like you mentioned, I've been lucky enough to go to different shows and be at the back of the house, be there during load in, load out. I'm there for whatever reason. I get to see what toys these guys are playing with. And then I figure out, after I've seen 10 shows, and out of 10 of them, 8 of them all got this same box, this EQ, this compressor, pretty much tells you that's what they use. So they're using it for a reason. So I'm like, I need to get that, So what ended up happening for me was, after that, like I said, that 2-year window, I kind of wasn't getting the sound that I wanted. I kind of limped across. I actually, believe it or not, I actually pulled out my rack that had DSP in it. So I've got outboard compressor, EQ, exciter, all kinds of stuff. That actually helped a lot. It actually opened up the sound. But again, it really was more of a SPL thing. I really wasn't, like, I was finding, or I should say, I was redlining a lot quicker than I anticipated. Like, and I think that's, for me, is the big difference and the advantage, versus passive, is generally speaking, with gear that's marketed towards DJs that are active, you're going to redline a lot quicker than you will in a passive system, because they just don't have the headroom. And again, that's just one of the cons of active. For all the convenience and the simplicity that active does afford you, the flip side of that coin is, you're really not going to get monster power, and you're not going to get headroom, and you're going to peak out a lot quicker, with, in my experience, at a certain level.
Well, as Ben Stowe says, the right rig for the gig.
Right.
If you're doing 150, 200 person wedding, even up to 300, an active system is just fine. I haven't come close to redlining in those situations, but if you get a festival gig or an outdoor thing that's going to be close to 1,000 people, well, then, yeah, I'm thinking, this is going to be a passive rig, because, you're going to need that. And you're going to need that sound pressure level.
Exactly.
And that control that you're talking about. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
If I won the lottery and snap my fingers, like, for me, the ultimate system would be, believe it or not, would be like a hybrid. I would love to have, like, my mids and highs be active. I got no problem with that. But my subs, give me passive all day, dude. I want a rack of, Crown or QSC, PL4s, PL6s that I know when I hit that 909 note, all those green lights, and I'm going to see massive air pushed. And there just isn't an active sub that can do that. They're just not, again, and there are some incredible touring level, subs that are out there that are active, but no one's slapping, like I said, a freaking PL4 into a sub. It's just not going to happen.
Okay, so personally, do you own both passive and active systems?
Technically, technically yes, but obviously my inventory is more passive than active. I do have an old school that I use for a monitor. I have an old school, and I think, dude, I've had that thing probably close to 20 years, I bet. I got an old school JBL Black G2 Eon, the freaking 10-inch little wedge joint. And dude, that thing's awesome. I mean, I pretty much use that, for it. I don't use a monitor, but if I'm working with somebody who has to have one, they have yet to complain for it. I'm actually waiting on delivery on a LD Systems, a Maui 28 G2.
Whoa.
Yeah. I kind of decided, and the only reason that I actually picked it up was because I got it like super cheap. And believe me, we can do a whole another session in the future about used gear,
yeah. I've actually heard those speakers, and they're just
exactly. I've heard nothing but good things about LD Systems.
Yeah.
And dude, let's put it this way: there's no secret. The 28G2 retails for what, $1,400
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even pay half that.
Right.
For the one that I'm getting, because I got it on an auction. So
okay. So let me ask you another question here. Now, you say that for the most part you have an active system. What sort of events are you doing that you would bring all that heavy gear out? And I wouldn't call it old school, because sure. Ben Stowe himself runs $1 million EV passive rig,
right?
For concert level,
right? Exactly. So I basically, even with my passive stuff, I actually have pretty much three sound systems, and I've got like a small, medium, and large. So my small system is nothing more than a pair of 10-inch two-way Martin Audio F10 black lines that I got ridiculously cheap, from I think Sam Ash. And I usually bring those out if I'm feeling lazy or I'm doing an event, and everybody wants numbers and thresholds. So, and I know Ben's famous words, it depends. And I'm totally on board with that. But for the sake of, the show, I usually only bring out the Martin Audios for like 75 people and less.
Okay.
If I'm doing a really small gig that I don't need subs, those F10s are pretty freaking amazing, and the fidelity of them is ridiculous. I mean, obviously it's only a 10-inch. I'm not going to get boomy crazy bass, but again, if I'm playing to 30-40 people, they're perfect. You know what I'm saying? So that's my small rig. I actually have that coupled with a QSC PLX 3402, so it's got headroom for days. I run it stereo. It's great. If I want to bring out 4 tops for whatever reason, I actually picked up another. I have a pair of Turbo Sound. I think they're the TX 121s, which are a 12-inch two-way, and those are old school Turbo Sounds. So this was before Behringer got them. So they actually sound pretty good. They remarkably sound. And again, we can get into. I've been so lucky in my tenure to listen and have been able to listen to so many different PAs. And so I know what I know what an EAW rig sounds like. I know what a JBL rig sounds like. I know what a Meyer rig sounds like. You know what I'm saying? I'm so fortunate to be able to know what the palette, what the sound is of each manufacturer. So even though I know a lot of people say, mixing and matching is like big taboo, you know what you're doing.
I don't believe that either.
Yeah, I mean, believe me, there's a lot of people that are like, you got to buy 20 speakers, buy them all the same. And I'm like, I get it. But if I get a good deal on XY brand and, I'm not going to pass it up just because I got, 8 speakers that are X and I want Y, because that's a stupid deal. And that's how I've gotten this stuff. So anyway, but like I said, my small rig is Martin Audio. My medium rig, which pretty much does 80%, 75% of the work I do, is my Nexo rig. And that is, I used to have 2, now I got 4 tops that are 10-inch two-ways, and only 15 on a pair of 15-inch bottoms. But I'm pumping a PLD 4.5 QSC on it, so I'm getting right at about 5,000 watts on that rig, and I can do inside. I can do up to about. I feel comfortable about 350. depending on the size room. I've done stuff outside with it, as long as they're not expecting, the Rolling Stones. You know what I'm saying? I can do outside coverage with that system, and I just love it, dude. I mean, I never thought in my I got it used. I never thought in my born days I would have an EXO rig, and it is just, I always get at least one person going, dude, what is this? This sounds amazing, because it's just so clear. And I can go up to unity, dude, which I never do. That, again, headroom. I can push it. I've had that rig. I've had a meter on it. I've had it peaking at 119 dB.
Wow, amazing. And
no distortion, no discoloration, nothing. I love that rig. And my large rig that I use, like festivals, real outside stuff for like 1,000 people, I can probably do 1,500 comfortably. I don't think I can do too much more than that unless I beef it up. And that one's a EV rig. I actually have 4 EV Delta Max tops, the 1122s, which are 12-inch two-way. I got 4 of those, and then I got 4 double 18 MTL2s, and I've got right under 12,000 watts just in subs in power. That rig number wise comes out to right under 17,000 watts. And,
okay, this brings me to my last question then. For the viewers, there is, especially at this point in time, and you and I both do this, we can't pass up a good deal. And there is a lot of passive stuff out there right now. So there'll be a lot of people tempted to pick up this passive stuff because it's very affordable.
Right.
Now, I have seen this so many times. If you could explain to our viewers, you have X speaker. What is the headroom that you want on the amp? People talk about, well, you have to match the amp to the speakers. If they're 200 watt speakers, you need a 200 watt amplifier. That is incorrect. So please.
Sure.
Help us out.
Yeah. I'll be honest. Back in the day, like when we started, I pretty much thought the same thing. I got a 200 watt speaker, I need 200 watt amp. Simple math. Then I found out that shit don't work. And I found out I found out firsthand. And then again, I was lucky and fortunate enough to see people with these monster rigs, and I started knowing what the specs were. And I actually had a guy sit me down. I was like, hey, dude, why do you have that JBL box that I know is rated like 400 watts, but you got like a 5,000 watt amp on this thing? What are you doing? Doesn't make sense to me. And if you really do the homework, and you do, I've seen it time. I think it's even in the Yamaha Sound Bible, that thick book we all read back in the day. I've seen it on EAW's manuals. I've seen it on EV's manuals. I've seen it on Nexo's manuals. You gotta run 100% over. So basically 200% minimum of what the speaker load is rated. So to keep the math simple, if you have a 100 watt speaker, you should not have anything less than a 200 watt amp on it. And I know it starts getting crazy and exponential. So if you got like the MTL subs I bought them unloaded. So I know the original drivers, I think, were a 400 watt EV 18 in them, and they don't even make them anymore. I put BNCs in them, and they're 700 watt. So I got a 1,400 watt load on that bin. I gotta have an amp that is no less than 2,800 watt, and I got a 3,400 watt going to each sub. I got four bins. I got 4 amps. And I know it sounds crazy. It's but it when you do it, it makes complete sense. And the reasoning, right? And the reasoning is like, a car analogy. Sure, if you want to tow a trailer, what do you can either buy an F-350 and drive in second gear all day and be good, or you can buy a Prius and have that thing revving at 9,000 RPMs, and after about 3 miles, it's going to blow up on you.
Right.
Same thing. you gotta have headroom. You gotta have that cushion, and music, all the music we play. I don't care if it's orchestral, jazz, hip hop, dance, EDM. It's volatile. It's totally fluctuating. So even though the averages stay here, when you get that build up, that drop, that come in, that kick, that 4/4 kick, dude, you look at a waveform. Every time that waveform goes like this and goes back down, you're hitting the capacitors on your power amp. And if the juice hasn't been restored up in there, guess what? You get clipping, you get distortion. You don't see the little lights on the amp staying green and kiss yellow. You see them suckers like a Christmas light, the Christmas tree, red all day. You do not want that. That's bad. There's meters are there for a reason.
You make a very good point there about having that headroom. Although it seems counterintuitive, like, well, this powerful amp will blow up these speakers. Actually, it's the other way around.
It really is.
Underpower, a speaker load, you will not. It's no ifs, ands, or buts. You will eventually blow that amplifier up.
Exactly right. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. Because and not to get too zen about it, but at the end of the day, all we're doing when we're doing sound reinforcement, DJ work, whatever, we're messing with the faders. We're changing voltage. That's what we're doing. We're changing little itty bitty voltage to make it super big and make it go boom. And the power amplifier is the part where it changes the little bitty voltage into big. And it's taking AC power in, like I said, and charging the capacitors. If there isn't juice in the battery, it's like starting a car every half second, And if you don't have the juice in the battery to turn the car over, you ain't going anywhere. Power amp does the same thing,
Exactly.
And that's why, again, that's one of the downsides, to a certain level. I mean, not being negative, but that's one of the flip coins, if you will, of having a complete active system. Is you got power, and again, the technology is insane. I mean, I know PowerSoft makes a lot of OEM amp power plate amps that like the size of my phone, dude. I mean, they're ridiculously small. It's just crazy. You got something that's I'm dating myself, but it's like 2/3 the size of a VHS tape, and it's like 2,000 watts. Freaking crazy, But a lot of these manufacturers, when you got a $600 speaker, which is a lot of money, you ain't getting a PowerSoft power plate amp in there. You're getting some whatever Taiwan Chinese amp that when you put a meter to it, it may say at 1,000 hertz for like half second.
Exactly.
Yeah, you'll get 1,000 watts, but that's not what you're going to get continuously. And then you're wondering, I did a high school prom and I had my whatever. I'm not gonna, like I said, call out manufacturers, but whatever. I got my XYZ speakers out there. Why is it red? Why is it distorting? Why is it clipping? It says it's 2,000 watts. That's why.
All right, Tony, we're almost at end of time here. What advice would you give to a beginner that wants to start out with sound reinforcement or has used his sound system for DJing?
I think one of the biggest things, the biggest tip I would give somebody, and I know it's a little hard now, but I would really try to, forget. I know it's easier said than done, but and I know we don't have all, Elon Musk money, but put money and budget aside at first. If you're really starting out, which is kind of good, you're ignorant of the journey you're about to take, which is fine. And ignorance is lack of knowledge. I'm not calling anybody
exactly.
So let's just be clear on that. So believe me, I'm still ignorant about stuff too. But if you're really starting out, put money aside and go and listen. Go to as many festivals, as many concerts. If you're in the business or getting, you're going to know somebody that knows somebody. Go, become friends with a DJ. Go become friends with a guy who does AV, production, and listen to what they have. And if you can't even do that, like I said, when I started saying it isn't as easy as it used to be, I'm in Virginia, and Richmond is in the center of it, and it's really not the biggest city in the state. I go an hour and a half east. I go to Virginia Beach. It's exponentially demographically larger. I go an hour and a half north, just south of DC, again, exponentially larger. So back in the day, dude, I take a road trip because I know stores up in Nova and stores in Virginia Beach aren't going to have the same inventory that I got in Richmond. So I'd make it a point to be like, I go see my boy Randy up in Chuck Levin's up at Washington Music Center, because they got everything. I mean, literally, like, you would open up an old school PSSNL catalog and be like, oh, wow, this is great. They got that shit on the showroom floor. I mean, it was insane. So you would, again, listen, go to a Guitar Center, even if it's in a great one. Go to a Sam Ad, go to some store that has a bunch of speakers, because trust me, they got nothing else to do. Bring your phone, bring a little media player with music that what it sounds like. That the kick sounds like this, and I want it to sound like this. The horns sound like this. Bring an Earth, Wind, and Fire. Something with a lot of dynamics, something with a lot of character, and then listen to what every speaker does, and you'll learn really quick. Wow, now I know why that speaker costs $300 and that speaker costs $1,300. And then once you get into a place with your headspace that, okay, I really don't need a $1,300 speaker, but I know I'm not getting the $300 one. Where now can I go to get, now that I know what I want to sound like or what I expect the sound to sound like, let me go towards that. And I would also tell you, don't buy it 3 times over. I mean, it's I love the posts that are like, oh, I'm starting out, blah, blah, blah. And everybody recommends these really POS systems. I'm like, come on, man. Let me put it this way. If you're going to do what we do for, let's say, more than 2 years, take an extra 3 months, save some more money. I mean, I understand you may have a gig this Saturday and your idea was, I got to buy my shit Thursday because I want to, use it Saturday. But buy it right the first time. Take the time, do the homework, listen to what is out there, develop your palette so more importantly, what you want to sound like, but more importantly, what you don't want to sound like. And once you get that information, then you're actually informed. Then you can be like, oh, now I know why this speaker is $800 versus this one is $400. And don't get me wrong, if you think the $400 one sounds great, get that one. But regardless, at least you'll know. You know what I'm saying? You're just not going to be like, oh, I only have $1,000 to spend, so I'm just going to go get some stuff to get me through. And then within 18 months, you would have spent the money and the headache and the gas and all this stuff because you bought the system. You know what I'm saying? It's just, buy with your ears and buy being informed.
Well, thank you, Tony. Now, if people have some questions or they want to get in touch with you, what's your best contact information?
I am delinquent to say I do have a IG account. I have no idea what it is. I'm so bad with that stuff. I really need, but obviously people hopefully can find me via Facebook. That has not been a problem. Yeah,
sure.
It's probably the most simplest direct route, and I'd be more than happy. Believe me, I get people asking me stuff about music and remixes and sound and stuff all the time.
Yeah, and you are one talented DJ, I must say.
Well, thank you.
We're going to stop the recording, but you folks in the room, hang around. Tony's going to be here for a little bit, and you can ask some questions afterwards. So until next week, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you then. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.